Today I'm driving the 2019 Ford Focus. In this case it's a 2-liter diesel engine with an 8-speed automatic gearbox. And yes, it's an automatic gearbox. In the last generation of Ford Focus, Ford used their power shift dual clutch transmissions, which were prone to giving owners problems, which also led to them being known as the power shit transmission. Anyway, with this generation they've gone to a torque converter automatic, and I have to say it's pretty decent. Changes are smooth, they are relatively quick. I mean, it's plenty good enough for, you know, an everyday car like this. The 2-liter diesel engine I think is quite adequate for the car. It has 150 horsepower and I think about 270 Newton meters of torque. It can accelerate the car, in this case with the automatic transmission, in like 9.5 seconds from 0 to 100 kph, which, let's be honest, it's not very fast. But on the other hand, the engine manages to feel sprightly. I mean, there is no turbo lag. It picks up right from the stand still, and I think that makes it a rather nice engine. I mean, for everyday drive, for stop and go, the car feels more powerful than it actually is. And you will only notice the shortcoming in power, you know, when you start topping out, when you start driving motorway speeds. But even then, the car is plenty fast enough. It's just, you won't get that feeling of acceleration anymore, you know, past 100 kph or so. This car, of course, like all modern cars, has different driving modes. In this case, it's normal, it's eco, it's sport, and then it's comfort and it's eco comfort, because this car also has adjustable dampers. The version without adjustable dampers just has the 3 modes: normal, eco and sport. Sports mode is good when you're like driving it hard, but when you drive it around regularly, sports mode kind of makes no sense because it just keeps on dragging out the gears. So you are driving around in town at like 3,500–4,000 RPM, and you know, that's not really necessary because the car has got plenty of torque low down, so it can just shift normally at, you know, 1,500 revs or how much it does it. So yeah, sport mode, yes, if you're on a curvy road. Otherwise, yeah, don't bother. The automatic transmission obviously has a manual shifting mode with the little pedals behind the steering wheel, and it works fast enough, reasonably well enough. It's quite okay to use, but then again, being a mid-sized diesel engine, it's kind of limited in rev range, so shifting manually doesn't really do too much to enhance your driving pleasure. You can just as well stick it into auto and just let the automatic do everything, because basically you can downshift a gear. If you want to get another gear, you're already at the rev limiter, and the engine is not very giving above, you know, 3,500 RPM, so there's not really a point to shift manually. Something I really don't like about this automatic, and this is again me just nitpicking, but instead of having a lever to select which mode you want, it has a little knob. And I mean, sure, it's something different, it doesn't have to be bad, but what I don't like is that it's kind of far away and low down. So if you had the lever, it would be like, you do it like this, and if with the knob you have to go down, and then you also have to look at where are you putting it. I mean, you don't really have that feedback from the lever knowing where it should be. So yeah, I don't like it, but then again, it's a design choice. Some may prefer it to a lever. Speaking of the design choice and of the interior, I think the Ford Focus has quite a nice interior. This car I'm driving now is the ST-Line, which means it's the sporty Ford Focus. It has some sort of carbon fiber looking, you know, veneer on this, which looks fine. Of course, it feels like plastic because it most likely is. And the interior in generally, it feels a bit plasticky. I mean, sure, many of the plastics are soft touch, but nevertheless, it feels very plasticky, and I think some competitors, they offer a bit of a more premium feeling. But then again, I think the car is well built, everything feels okay. What I'm not so sure about is it has stitching in the plastic door cards. I mean, fake stitching in fake leather door cards. I mean, yeah, that's a bit strange. But other than that, I think the interior is perfectly adequate. The ST version has these nice seats, which are, you know, they hug you in the right places, they don't feel too tight, they're good. Of course, there are some design choices that are debatable. For example, the glued-on navigation screen that is here, not something I like. I prefer it when it's nicely integrated into the car. This always seems like an afterthought, and I cannot believe that the car that came out in 2018 had the navigation screen only as an afterthought, because it's basically standard on all models, so you have it always. But then again, matter of preferences. Some manufacturers try to integrate it, others stick it on top. Ford is one of the on top guys now. Another design choice that I find a bit odd is the instrument binnacle, because it's very flat. I mean, there's a very little depth to it. The previous model, the single instruments, they were contoured, they were in their own little pod and element, and in this case it's just one flat pane and there is one small screen like on top. And my question is, why is it so flat? The only thing I can imagine is that, well, there should be a version where it's screen, where the entire instrument binnacle is an LCD screen. Then it will make sense, because you have a flat instrument binnacle or a flat screen, it's basically the same. But as far as I've seen, there is no option to have the entire instrument binnacle screen, so maybe it's coming with a facelift? I don't know. But still, it's an odd choice. Come on. Yeah, the 2-liter diesel engine is not a performance monster, but it's very good in everyday driving. It feels sprightly. It's just when you push it, when you drive the car sort of hard, yeah, it obviously isn't gonna wow you, but still, it feels perfectly adequate. Yeah, Ford Focus have always been good handling cars, and in this case it's no exception. The car feels very secure. You get a slight feel of lift-off oversteer when you go into a corner with a back starting to swing around, but it's very, very subtle, and actually it helps you go around the corner, making this car feel, very confidence-inspiring, very good to drive. Yeah, I think Ford did a good job of setting this car up, of making it handle properly, of making it feel, sporty, which I think is basically the whole concept behind the Ford Focus. Because when I first got into this car, the first thing I noticed is how low the seating position is. And at first I was a bit surprised by it, because the last Focus I've driven was the last generation RS. And in that car, it really bothered me how high the seating position was. I mean, it had these stupid Recaro seats with the consoles that are probably half a meter high, so you were sitting way too high in the car. And in this car, I was really pleasantly surprised to find that, yes, the seating position is very low. And I think Ford are actually positioning the Focus more for the people who like, the driving experience, who are the more keen drivers, who want the lower center of gravity, because everybody else nowadays is buying SUVs. So yeah, I think it's a good decision. And in that regard, of all the Focus trim levels, I would get the ST-Line like I'm driving now, because there's also a Vignale line, which is like a bit more posh, but it has leather inside. And there's like the Trend, which is the entry level, which looks like crap. I mean, no, you should get the ST-Line, because it feels sporty, it handles well, also it looks quite good. This car especially, it has the optional 18-inch wheels and this optional blue paint. These are $2,000 well spent. Speaking about money, the Focus ST-Line with a 2-liter diesel engine like I'm driving now has a base price of around 32,000 Swiss francs. This car has a few options, bringing it up to 38,000 Swiss francs, which, I mean, for a compact car is not too bad. especially considering some of the options the car has, I think are really well worth the money. I already mentioned the paint, I already mentioned the 18-inch wheels, but this car also has adaptive cruise control. And it's a pretty good adaptive cruise control. I mean, it works very well. You can basically drive it, leave it on all the time, and it will do the acceleration, the braking for you. This car also has lane assist, active lane keeping. Yeah, it works all right, but I'm personally not a big fan of it because you always have to kind of wrestle the car because it wants to go that way, you want to go that way, because it tries to constantly keep you in the perfect line. And human beings don't drive in perfect lines. Human beings, you know, they sometimes get a bit closer to a line and sometimes they stay a bit further away. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of that system. What I'm a big fan of is the Bang & Olufsen sound system, which for a kind of cheaper, non-luxury car, it sounds really good, and together with the navigation is basically just a 500 franc option, so it would be silly not to get it. This being Switzerland, the car of course also has the winter package, which I think is very good. It means heated seats, heated steering wheel and heated windshield. So, in conclusion, what do I think of the Ford Focus? Well, I think it's quite apparent. I think it's a very good car. I mean, at first glance, it's a diesel and it's an automatic. It might not be that interesting, but having driven it, I say the diesel engine is, you know, plenty good enough. The automatic is very adequate. It shifts nicely. You can even shift manually if you want. Who bothers? So as far as normal cars go that do not have 500 million horsepower, I think the Focus 2-liter diesel is a really good one. It looks good, it's reasonably well built, it's well equipped, it has good options, it's not that expensive, it handles well. As is more than obvious, I'm quite surprised by this little car and I like it quite a lot. I think, sure, it could have some nicer materials in the interior, but then again, this is not a very expensive car, so it's okay, it's adequate. And yeah, if you're looking for, you know, a hatchback for a compact family car, yeah, have a look at the Focus. It's surprisingly good. Thanks for watching.